Hello to everyone and welcome to another episode with Feel Good with me. I'm your host Idan, and today I have a very special guest. He's special for several reasons. One, he actually has ME, he's going through it, he's living through it, and he's been through it for many years. And so it's always very easy to communicate and to understand and relate to someone that's going through what we are going through, so that's great. It's great, it's not great, we're going through this, it's not the best, but it's great on the level that we understand each other. I told him already, I feel like a family member as soon as I speak to someone with our condition. And the second thing that is really special for, he works with the ME Association, he's going to tell us all about it. But first, what I'd like him to do is to introduce himself properly. So we have Russell Fleming here with us today from the ME Association. So welcome, Russell. If you can introduce us a little bit, what you've been through, how you're doing now, your work at the ME Association. Then you're going to go to the NICE guideline, to the ME Biobank. Lots of interesting things you are involved in helping and promoting. So thank you again for your work, firstly, and the stage is yours.
Thank you very much. So my name is Russell Fleming. I was living and working on the island of Jersey, which is just offshore from France, when I took a holiday, picked up a virus and never really got better. And that was 22 years ago. At the time I was working for private banking. I was an investment manager. As you know, we quite often try our best to get back to work. So I tried multiple times to go back to work, but it didn't work out, and pushed it and had another big relapse. So 22 years later, here I am. Things have been up and down over the 20 years. I went to college to pursue hobbies, to give myself a bit of structure. That was good, part-time. My parents used to drive me there and back. And then I went to university, studied ancient history at Lampeter in Wales. Again, to give me some structure, to sort of test my boundaries a bit, to see if I'd manage. Loved it, absolutely loved it, would recommend it to anybody. Mature students at university, fantastic idea. But I had I picked up several infections from all these young students, and had several relapses, extended my degree to 4 years, but although I passed everything, I couldn't get my dissertation in, so I didn't get my degree, unfortunately, but I was happy with the award they gave me, and that was a bit of a shame. Then came out of university, again, slowly got better. Reached a point where actually it was my family pushing me, time to get a job, Russ, again, time to get a job. Tried various jobs, all at a very reduced level from my capabilities. I served as an administration assistant in a special needs school. I couldn't count the dinner money. It was ridiculous. I used to work in the bank. My first job in the bank was a cashier, and I couldn't count the coins. I remember that specifically. I just could not do the job. So that didn't last very long. And then a job working nights in a supermarket, because I thought maybe that might be more compatible, but I just wasn't physically capable of doing it. And then I was approached by the ME Association, and I've worked with them, and I'd become more of an online presence. I joined forums, and I used to write articles, and I had a good Twitter following at one point. And I started reading about the research and trying to familiarize myself with things. A lot of it's too complex for me, but I got a good grounding, I think. So the ME Association approached me and asked if I wanted to take on a part-time role, which was a big step. So it was a bit of a gamble, as these things are. But I did it and was running the website and the social media for a while, a couple of years. And then they asked me if I wanted to go full-time, which again was another step into the unknown. But working from home gives me that ability to, that flexibility that I need. So, you know, I can work for a couple of hours, or even just an hour, or even just half an hour, and then I can take a break and have a rest. And so long as, you know, over the course of the week, I reach my full-time target of hours, they're happy. And it's worked out well. So it might have taken 20 years, but there's been a lot of ups and downs. There's no guarantee, of course, and I think most people with ME will say that you know, it's always there in the back of your mind. You know, am I going to be this well next week, tomorrow? You know, so I probably put too much of my ability into work, so I'm not saying I've got a very good sort of work-life balance. I did take on a puppy last year, which I always promised myself I'd do. So he's now you know, he's giving me a good balance. But I probably do put too much into work, I think. But it's a delight being able to sort of help other people, and as you've said, just talk to people with ME as part of my job. And you know, if I do help people, then it's brilliant. But more often than not, they help me, because it's a very isolating, lonely illness, and you know, connecting is essential. You know, if I'd met other people with ME in those first 5 years when I had it, I think my mental attitude would have been a lot better than it was, because you just crumble. Well, I certainly did. I mean, everybody expects, don't they? It's maybe a bit different now after, you know, during this pandemic, but we were all conditioned, I think, with modern medicine and all that. You know, you get an infection and you recover from it. You have a couple of weeks off work, maybe, but you get over it and you get back to full health. Nobody tells you that, you know, you might not, that it might take a very long time for you to slowly return to improve, and nobody tells you the extent to which it can affect you. And you know, I couldn't walk, I could barely talk, you know, I needed help to do basic tasks, you know, get into the toilet. It's humiliating, and you know, the medical profession just didn't know anything about it back then. And you know, now hopefully the situation's changing, and I think the pandemic has alerted a lot of people to the fact that, you know, not everybody does get over these things, and so hopefully it's, you know, waking the professions up. Anyway, sorry, I went on a bit. That was me.
No, it's amazing to hear your story from 20 years ago, and what really there's a few things stood out there from, but you touched on the brain fog from a person that used to work as a cashier to struggling to count coins, a few coins. It's such an analogy of how change and damaging and debilitating this condition is. And also you spoke about the speech and basic needs need to help with. It's really debilitating, and you're right, the pandemic is raising awareness with long COVID of what it is like not to recover it from an infection, from a virus.
I mean, my job in Jersey before ME, I mean, I was managing millions of pounds of people's money, you know, and investing in stocks and shares. And I remember one of my phased return to works that didn't work out quite well. I remember having to ask one of my colleagues how to calculate percentages, because my brain just couldn't. And as you know, it's reading and things like that. It's almost like you have to learn it all over again. And every time you sort of fall back, have a relapse, because you've done too much, or because you picked up another infection or something has caused you to slip back, you have to keep picking up the pieces again. And it's awful. It really is. I mean, it's not you don't sort of get sick and then it's a straight line to recovery. I mean, it's so up and down, and there's just no guarantees that you're on the right path, that next year you're going to be, back windsurfing or surfing, or, whatever you did before. It's, yeah.
I think what you just said, that you will try to relearn something, or I'll put it also, like you will try to read a book, you'll start reading a book, and then 2 days later you had a relapse, you're just not feeling well, your brain fog kicked in, you have to reread the book, and if a day later again you have it's as if everything was forgotten once again. And it is so frustrating when people used to tell me, surely there's something you can do, Idan. And I would say, look, with the pains of the fibromyalgia, ME pain that you get in your body, there's a way maybe to deal with it. Although sometimes it's so debilitating, when you saw pain, you're out of it anyway, so there's nothing to do. But on day when the pain wasn't so hard, then I would say, is there something I can do? And disappointingly, the answer often would be, well, I can try to relearn something so I can do something more easy for me. But then the next day I will forget what I was trying, or even to work from home to write essays for a living or whatever it is. You can't. I was trying to write a book for years about my ME experience, but I forget everything, so I have to remind myself, and then I look back, and they used to suggest me, just make notes. I forget I made the notes, and then I look at the notes and I'm totally blank. Where is that coming from? All of these things, I guess, people with ME and brain fogs and similar autoimmune condition of post-viral infection, we can relate to, and for most people, thankfully, they don't have to understand this. And another thing, I feel a strong connection to I'm sometimes surrounded by elderly people, and they forget things and stuff.
Yeah.
And I feel so I always, when in my 20s, when it happened, I used to have a girlfriend, and she said, "You're like an 80-year-old man, you're worse than my granddad." And it was funny for an extent, but it is like to get off the chair, you have to moan ground, however you say, you're like struggling. I once wrote a poem, even climbing a flight of stairs. You're out of breath by the second step, forget doing the next 5. So it's things like that and I think why you do a lot of your work and this podcast is to remind people you're not alone. I know there's even less men that talk about it, maybe, or have ME. So also for you guys, no, you're not alone. You got 2 different people here. Russell is more from the banking industry, full-on brainy person. He had it. Don't be shy. It happened. We didn't choose it. Embrace it. Try to find ways and to connect with people that can support you and offer you and to remind you you're not alone. And that there's small things we can do. But one of the main things to do is to recognize it, to say it is what it is. We can't take the blame on ourselves, and if others don't understand us, then find those who do. And let's speak a little bit about the ME Association. What can the ME Association do for people of any gender, of any age, that going through these symptoms? What is it that can help us? Because as you said, the first 5 years you had no one, and me as well, for the first 5-7 years, nobody knew what I was going through. As you know, the internet was there, but it was a lot harder to research what those symptoms are. So please take it to the ME Association and how it can able to help us and be there for us, and what does it mean?
Well, I think following on from what you've just been saying, one of the first most important things that we can do as a charity for anybody is to connect them to other people. And I mean, it's essential, as we've both been saying, isn't it? When I was first ill, there was no internet. It was just coming in. Now we have bigger audiences on social media than we've ever had before. The community, the ME community on social media is huge now. Well, relatively speaking. So anybody can pop onto the ME Association's Facebook page, Twitter page, Instagram page, even find us on LinkedIn, YouTube channel, and ask questions, you know, send us a message on Facebook, send us a direct message on Twitter, whatever question you might have, and we will try and answer it ourselves, or we will ask the community to get them to share their experiences with you, because that often is really helpful, you know, to hear from other people how they've tackled a particular problem. I don't know about you, but I mean, because there's no actual treatment, there's no cure, you know, we learn by speaking to other people, I think. So that's the first big thing I would say is you know, the ability, we've got this ability to connect people. You can become a member of the charity, and then one of the benefits for you then is that we will send you a free ME Essential magazine, which again keeps you up to date with all the latest developments. You can, you know, it's good for the family to read if you're not able to read. It's stories from other people with ME. Dr. Charles Shepherd, who's probably the most recognised medical authority on ME in the UK. He's our medical advisor. So you'll find Ask the Doctor sections where, again, you can write in and Charles will answer your questions in the magazine. So that's really beneficial, I find. I think one of the other big things that we're recognised for is we have the largest range of literature about ME anywhere in the UK. So if you visit the website, you'll find free information letting you know about what ME is all about. But if you head over to the website shop, you'll also find all the leaflets, booklets, guides. We've got guides to benefits to help you apply for something like personal independence payment or employment and support allowance or universal credit or carers allowance. We have expert advisors, benefits advisor, we have a dental advisor, we have a diet and nutrition advisor and other advisors who all feed in to provide their expert knowledge when we create the literature, when we help people by answering their questions. We campaign, obviously, to raise awareness about ME. One of our most successful campaigns, I think, was led to the NICE, which we'll come on to talk about in a minute, to them reviewing and updating the guideline for MECFS, which is a framework of recommendations that go out to the NHS and social care. The previous guideline was really not very good. The new guideline is much better and is one we fully support, but we campaigned to get it changed. It took a long time. It's not easy to change these sort of things, but at one point we had a petition over 15,000 signatures, and it's slowly, all the effort built up a head of steam, I think, and NICE decided that they would listen and then review the guideline, and it was the new guideline was published last October. I'll talk about that in a minute. Another big thing that we do is we offer a telephone helpline. So anybody can phone up. You don't have to have ME. You can be a family member or a carer, but obviously we deal mostly with people who've got ME or who think they might have ME. And our fully trained team up and down the country will take your calls. We're open 365 days a year. We took about, I think it was 3,500 calls last year to the helpline. And our helpline volunteers are able to listen. They're very, very good at listening. If you've got any problems, you want to talk things out, you want to talk things through, which is often one of the key things I think people do like to do. Or if you want, you know, directing to information, reliable information, they're quite happy to help you with that. We also have newsletters go out via email. You can sign up via the website. As well as a members magazine, we have, last year we introduced a medical magazine. So we're building up a mailing list, members of the public are we're happy if you want to nominate your GP or other healthcare professional to receive the magazine. It features articles and content from our experts, as well as interviews with healthcare professionals themselves who work with the NHS or privately. Excuse me. And again, it goes out to healthcare professionals, helps to raise awareness, helps to keep them in touch, keep them informed, so that when they do see somebody with suspected ME or who has ME, they might be a bit more aware, because there's nothing worse, is there, than going to see a GP and sort of being confronted by a sort of blank look or a disbelieving look, or coming away from an appointment feeling worse than when you went in. So anything we can do to change that is one of our top priorities. And we fund research. We're one of two main charities that fund research. We focus on biomedical research. We want to understand what causes ME. We want to understand why only certain people seem to get ME. And we obviously want to find an effective treatment for ME. So we have a research fund, and we ask researchers to get in touch with us to make a grant application that we then review, and hopefully they receive a grant and can go on and develop some research. We're not a big charity, so unfortunately we can't provide, £1 million grants here, there and everywhere, which we would obviously love to do, because in order to advance research, you need big studies, but we can stimulate research. So, for example, if somebody comes to us and they've got an idea for a study, they just want to test it out, we could fund the study. If it works, they then apply to the Medical Research Council or the National Institutes of Health Research for the bigger grant. That's the theory. Training for healthcare professionals. We're working hard now because the NICE guidelines have been published, we're working hard now at measures to implement the guideline to ensure that the NHS take the guideline and actually do what it says. Again, we'll come back to that if you want. We also collaborate with other charities, organisations and patient groups. So we're part of Forward ME, the CFSME Research Collaborative, the All-Party Parliamentary Group on ME, Chronic Illness Inclusion, and several long COVID initiatives, because as we touched on before, long COVID is perhaps another example of a sort of post-viral fatigue syndrome. There are clear differences with long COVID, because the COVID virus can cause organ damage, which is different to what people with ME/CFS normally have. But people who have symptoms who don't fully recover after a COVID infection are now being diagnosed with ME/CFS. So there's a lot we can learn. There's a lot of research money going into long COVID, and some of those results are already looking interesting to people with ME/CFS, I think. So hopefully we can become a lot more close, work a lot more closely together. We've got a lot of free information about COVID and long COVID on the website. So that's another area where we're working together. So that's roughly what we are as a charity, I think. We've been going since 1978. We still have staff working for the charity who've been with us since 1978. Neil Riley and Dr. Charles Shepherd being just two examples. So in all that time, we've built up a wealth of experience and sort of knowledge. And I think generally speaking, people appreciate what we do. We receive a great deal of compliments from people. And, if anybody has got any ideas or suggestions as to things we could do better or new things we should be doing, then, they've only got to let me know, and I'll certainly have a look into it.
It's amazing. It just goes to your testament that there's still people working there. That's one thing that stood out. In charities, it is very difficult to keep them together. I used to work for a few in the past, but that's amazing. And you covered so many things you guys do, and I'm sure it's never the whole full list because there's always other things coming and going. But it's just so inspiring and motivating and uplifting. I'll just touch on a few points that stood out for me and that I relate to. So as you say, connecting with other people through your social media, and I will include the links in the description below of this podcast and on my social media that relate to this podcast, so you can get in touch with the ME Association and also with the Helpline. I think the Helpline, it is really key when you have ME and going through this. As Professor Leonard Jason says, it's not that we have ME because we are depressed at all, but the thing is, when you have all your life, your livelihood taken away from you, it is so frustrating, upsetting, depressing. Then of course speaking to someone that can relate to that, it's amazing. It's so hopeful. So having the ME Association there, that you can call them and say, look, I just had to quit my job, as Russell did. I just thought maybe my relationship can stay because it's difficult to be compatible when one person is healthy and wants to get on with life and push and have the idea, and then maybe for me, I'm in my times I was in bed for nearly 2 years, so there's those conflicts and situations to speak to someone that we can discuss these things, or members of family don't understand what we're going through. Then it's just nice to have that, like a family, the ME Association, that understand you can speak to someone maybe with ME. They probably all have ME people on the helpline or been trained, as you said, to understand us. So I just can't say how invaluable this is, and I'll put the phone there so you can call if you feel you need to speak to someone. I wish I knew someone like that. It would have uplifted me and helped me so much. And then with the social media, I'll just give a quick example of how valuable this is. Again, a lady wrote a few weeks ago that her daughter is barely sleeping, and then she asked any suggestion what people can help, and it related to me so much. Me at my height, I would sleep between 1 and 3 hours a night, and this would be for 2 or 3 years. You can imagine just living on 1 to 3 hours a night. Now, some people, I think Barack Obama slept 4 or 5 hours a night, and he was fine. But for me, I need my 8 or 9 hours a night. I'm not a 4 hour a night. I know there's some genetic in some people, but I'm nothing like that. On 7 hours, I can't function, let alone on a 1. So, and there's few things which I did over the years, over the past 15 years, actually, that some of them helped. I know they're not going to help everyone, and some of them are probably more silly than helpful, but at least there were people writing incredible things in there and helping her. And I even done a podcast because it was just at the time I started the podcast. So it's easier for me to do a podcast than to write, if I'm honest. So I just did that. And so it reminded me what helped me. And then I forgot, I'm not taking CBD. I haven't been keeping the room as quiet. And I've been sleeping a lot better since so it's just a reminder what we're going through. Because of the brain fog, we forget what helps us and what we're going through. So that power of your social media is amazing. And you guys, you just bombard with latest research, and it's so interesting. And then another good thing, sometimes you forget how you are, or that you have ME, and you try, and then if you get a newsletter from the ME Association, it's just something to keep in touch. There's people working the guts off really to try to find something, and the NICE guideline is a brilliant example. I think anyone that was involved, and I was involved with the Institute of Psychiatry at King's College at one point during my psychology studies, in the eating disorder unit, and I know how difficult to change anything in the guideline, and you guys managing to change, for example, this exercise thing, gradual exercise. What gradual exercise? We exercise, we have a relapse for 2 weeks, most of us. So just to see that changed, it's so valuable, and I can't be more thankful, and I'm sure other people with ME they tried to listen to them and do the exercise and felt worse for 2 weeks each time they tried and then felt bad because they're trying but they're not feeling good and what's wrong. And also you guys trying to rally to that the NHS actually goes to doctors and nurses and medical professionals and occupational therapy to consider the new guidelines and that what is how we should be talked to and looked at, and it's fantastic. And then the last thing is strength is in unity. If the more of us signing up and strengthen the ME Association charity, then when they need to get again 15,000 signature, instead of taking them a year to gather it to 6 months, they can do it in a month, so they can move quick. And if we can do 50,000 signatures instead of 15, again, so it's all of these great things. But yeah, so I think I speak here for anyone with we are very grateful for your work. I know this kind of work is not your 9-to-5 job. It's something you get involved and it goes and goes and goes because we get very passionate. I'll say quickly, I probably am going through COVID today. I am vaccinated, so it doesn't seem to be too hard, but still my throat, I'm a bit, but just knowing to speaking to someone with ME, to speaking to the ME Association, and that we're going to share and I managed to find my strength, and I'm actually feeling slowly a bit better. I'm sipping my herbal tea and speaking to you. You're filling me with good energy. But anyway, so we're done. We spoke about your experience and what you've been through. We spoke about the ME Association. Let's go into the NICE guideline a little bit more into detail, and then we'll move to the next one. But thank you so much, Russell, so far for everything.
Okay. So the NICE guideline, why is it important? Well, in the UK, well, particularly England and Wales and Northern Ireland, Scotland tend to go their own way a bit, but they've just announced they will be following the new NICE guideline, which is good news for Scotland. The NICE guidelines are important because they provide a framework of recommendations to health and social care services. So they're not enforceable. You can't, you can't sue a doctor if you think he's not following the recommendations of the guideline. They are guidelines, but they're better than nothing. And the difference between the guideline that was published in 2007 and the guideline that was published last year is palpable. I mean, the improvements, it's not perfect, nothing ever will be, but the differences are palpable. For example, let me just read a little bit. So, awareness of ME/CFS and its impact. I'm just going to read this out, hope you don't mind. Recognise that people with ME/CFS may have experienced prejudice and disbelief and could feel stigmatised by people, including family, friends, health and social care professionals, and teachers who do not understand their illness. Take into account the impact this may have on a child, young person, or adult with ME/CFS. Take into account that people with ME/CFS may have lost trust in health and social care services and be hesitant about involving them. Which, to me, after living with it for so long, to suddenly have that, it just makes me feel, well, quite proud in a way that they finally seem to have understood just what a lot of us have been through, you know?
I'm so excited. I had to interrupt you. It's unbelievable you managed to get this paragraph in there. It's anyway. I can't contain myself. Anyway, you keep going. This is just incredible. I just want to have it all over my social media already. This paragraph.
I mean, so what we've done as a charity since the guideline was, but I should first have started by saying that our very own Dr. Shepherd was a member of the guideline committee. So he worked for 3 years on developing this new guideline. They reviewed all the published research that has occurred about ME/CFS. They had myriad meetings and discussions, all these experts round a table with representatives from NICE, and they came out with this guideline. Like I say, it's not perfect, nothing ever will be, but if you read it and you read it properly, if you're able to read it, I think anybody will see that there's a better appreciation for what ME is, how it should be diagnosed, and how it should be managed. And what we've done as a charity, as soon as the guideline was published last October, I've written a summary, which is available as a free download. Again, I'll give you the link so that you can put it below the video. So it's more of an easy read. The guideline itself is actually quite an easy read, but it's quite, there's a lot of pages to go through. Hopefully our summary is a bit easier. Let me just, here's another key point, which is, again, what I've just read out from the guideline is right at the start. This is actually the very first, well, first of all, the guideline starts with a breakdown of the severities of ME, which again, in the previous guideline, they weren't as good as these. So it demonstrates that people can have mild symptoms and be mildly affected. People can be moderately affected, right up to being very severely affected, where they're confined to bed and dependent upon care. So it recognizes, that there's this spectrum, which is very important because people will fluctuate between the various severities, won't they? You might improve to be moderate so that you're able to do a bit more around the house. But then, you could do too much, or you could pick up another infection, or something could trigger a relapse and you might slip back to severe where you need more help. So it's very important to have that recognised at the start of the guideline. But the main point I wanted to just read out again was, be aware that ME/CFS is a complex chronic medical condition affecting multiple body systems. Just that, we didn't have it before. Be aware that it affects everyone differently, and its impact varies widely. For some people, symptoms still allow them to carry out some activities, whereas for others, they can cause substantial incapacity. Be aware that ME/CFS is a fluctuating condition in which a person's symptoms can change unpredictably in nature and severity over a day, week, or longer. Things like that, just to have it there in black and white, so that the guideline goes out to every single healthcare professional in the NHS. Mainly it targets GPs, but when they see somebody who they suspect might have ME, or when they see a patient that's already got ME, these guidelines are there for them to use. And hopefully, with our help, because we're working more closely than ever now with the NHS, we can get more doctors, occupational therapists, psychologists, all the physiotherapists, all the kind of people that provide a multidisciplinary care to people with ME. If we can get them all understanding and appreciating and working on putting the recommendations of the guideline into place, then I think it will be a game changer to healthcare. I really do.
Can't agree more with you. It's amazing that you managed to get those kind of paragraphs. And a paragraph you just read, for me, a GP is the first point of call. Often it's the first person we're going to seek and speak to. And if they can then, if they internalize and read it and just having that knowledge, they can respect us more. Because if they just think it's all in our head, okay, he's not sleeping, he's too sleeping, he's depressed, then the treatment, the call of action, the understanding is accordingly, and it's just not helpful. And then so having taken that seriously, it helps. And also, if a GP listens to that, or a medical professional, please know the time we come to see you, it may be the first or a time that we won't see you for a long time, because if we're not feeling well, we may be hibernating for 3 years trying to deal with our situation. And that often happened to me. Between each appointment, I luckily had a very nice GP who had no idea what to do, or no idea what it is I'm going through. But he wanted to help me. He was really listening. He was willing to send me to anyone, but I had no idea what was going on. And the thing that failed him and me together is that by the time I made up, if I managed to attend it, then I wouldn't attend one for another long time, and then we would send me to here and to there, and it was just all over the place. So if the GP are aware, they can make a small structure, and then you just can get more easily progress with this. And the ME Association, again, I bet would helping you find the GP that is more understanding in your area. And maybe, as you said, you got leaflets and things to download from the website, so you can print or post or something. You can get them posted to you, and then you can take it with to them, and it makes such a difference. There's like a frame of work to deal with here. So that's something I really liked. And the stigmatization that we're going through is crazy. As I'm sure all of you would experience, it's all in your head. You don't think I'm feeling tired, blah blah blah. It's all of that. So it's great it's mentioned there. And I also like how, Russell, you always say, if you're able to read, it's just so the considerate person you are. With brain fogs, I'm on top of brain fog. I was always dyslexic, so I struggle to read. Anyway, it's a task for me. I probably have ADHD, so but when you have ME, you're even more sensitive than usual. Whatever you have before, you just become more sensitive. And so maybe in the future, if we manage, we can do like a slide and you read it with us together or something like that. Because it's just so uplifting knowing that the nice guideline for ME is so detailed now. And as you say, it's not perfect, but it's so much better than what it was. Something like
I want everybody to familiarise themselves with the guideline. I think before you go and see a GP, you can hone in on the most relevant part to you, and you can then take it with you to the GP and you can discuss it with them. So the guideline, there are some fundamental changes to the guideline. For example, it is now recommending that if a GP sees somebody and suspects ME, they suspect it from 6 weeks after the symptoms have developed. In the past, you used to have to wait at least 6 months. And often, because of the lack of understanding and the stigma, people went for years before they got a diagnosis. Now, it should be recognised at 6 weeks. The diagnostic process should begin, and then by 3 months, if you've still got the symptoms, you should get a diagnosis of ME. That's remarkable compared to when I started 20 years ago. I mean, I was very lucky. I got a diagnosis reasonably quickly compared to other people, but we've run, website surveys. People have suffered with symptoms for 10 years or more before they've got a diagnosis. And the other thing I was just going to mention is that we hear from only a fraction of the people that might be affected. I mean, if you think that our Facebook following is 30,000, that's nothing compared to the estimated 265,000 people in the UK that are believed to have symptoms. So, our job is still incomplete. We've got to try and reach all these people. We've got to try and get them in front of doctors if necessary to get a diagnosis, to get appropriate management advice so that they can, find ways to live with the condition, to not worsen the condition. Because at the moment, I worry. I wonder, where are these people? How are they coping? Again, hopefully with the new NICE guideline, health professionals will be more aware, so that they will be able to spot the symptoms of ME, and they will be able to say to their patients who are very confused a lot of the time because they don't know what's happening to them. Why can't I work like I used to work? Why can't I, what's wrong with my walking ability? How come I can't do the same mental calculations that I used to do? Why can't I, prepare my own food? Why do I need all this help and support? So hopefully with the new guideline, health professionals will be more aware, and these people won't be left to, it must be awful, mustn't it? Not knowing what's wrong with you. I mean, I can't imagine. It was bad enough for me when they told me I had ME, because I said to myself, I don't want ME. I'd rather have 2 broken legs, because at the time ME was full of stigma, and people with it had a hell of a time trying to explain it to other people, because you were met with disbelief all the time. So if anything, I think the guideline is changing attitudes at long last. So there, that's the end of that bit.
And another key thing which you touched to is, before you had to wait 6 months. If the virus is still active or doing damage, you are losing 6 months of nothing being monitored, where maybe those 6 months there's some activity in the blood or something. They can have a look. Maybe they can already start anti-inflammatory diet, something. And as you said, so
also Eden, if you can't get in front of a doctor, if a doctor doesn't suspect, he can't then think about running the blood tests and other work to exclude other possible reasons for why you've got these symptoms, because there are other conditions that might be causing some of the symptoms that can be treated. So in the new guideline, these things are now identified. Doctors, you might have problems with your thyroid, for example, that can mimic some of the symptoms of ME. So unless you get in front of a doctor who's switched on to it, you could be going around with a thyroid problem or something else, thinking it's ME when it's not ME.
Absolutely. This is it's incredible that for so many years we had to go through that without a GP being educated that it's going to be diagnosed quicker, because, as you said, living a life with a broken thyroid has its own implications as well. So it really helps this new guideline, not just for ME patient to get a quicker diagnosis, but also for people with other health problem, get them as well further tests to rule out any of this. Is absolutely valuable. And maybe in a future episode, maybe if would be good to speak about, let's say you suspect having ME symptoms, you want to approach a GP, the first, so when you call the helpline, what to expect to happen, just a quick bite-sized episode or something, or maybe you already have this written, so we can share that, so people who are going through that or are newly diagnosed, that they don't feel alone as we perhaps did, and find a family and a place to speak to and more confident. So that would be.
We can do that. We can do that. I'm actually I'm rewriting. I was working on it since because my sleep is erratic, like you were talking about. So 3 o'clock this morning, I was writing the new diagnosis leaflet, which is, or it's going to be a booklet actually. So it's going to be useful for. It's going to talk about the NICE guideline, obviously, but it's going to be useful for people who think they might have symptoms. But it's also going to be useful for people who've gone through the diagnostic process, have got a diagnosis, and are wondering what to do next. What happens? Because, again, I don't know about you, but when I got the diagnosis, I mean, it provided relief because it was an answer to what the hell's going wrong with me. But it was also quite frustrating because it was ME, and I would have given anything for it to have been something else. I think things have changed in 20 years. I think the whole thing has improved. There's still a lot of work to do, but I don't think having it as a diagnosis now is as not demeaning is the wrong word, isn't it?
It's
But
daunting.
yeah. And now there's all this media interest and social interest in long COVID, which, as I mentioned before, you might consider another kind of post-viral fatigue syndrome sort of thing. Although it has got some key differences to ME, but it shares a lot of common symptoms to ME. I think if somebody got a diagnosis of ME today, I don't think it would carry the same stigma. I mean, there's going to be examples where it does. I appreciate that, because we hear from people, but we also hear from a lot of people now who, when they get the diagnosis, they do feel immense relief because they've suffered for so long not knowing. And I think that not knowing is so, it's not just demoralizing, it really messes with your head, doesn't it?
You feel so lost, because there's, you can't pinpoint, like, I've got this symptom, it could be this, it could be that. It just, and when you feel lost as a person, I think is a horrible feeling. So you're right. Getting a quick diagnosis, which now the new NICE guideline should do. And another thing you talk is that there's so many of us who are going through this to one level or another. We haven't got a diagnosis. We may have it, we may have something, but as you said, there's only 30,000 people you're probably reaching out with them. There's probably another 250,000, if not more, that's going through this and are feeling lonely or not realizing why they're struggling in life, why they're not doing well at work, in their relationship, with their family, with friends, with whatever. And this could be something that it's affecting. I'll just give a quick story. I used to have a vegan cafe in East London, and one of my customers was a guy. He looks like a model, tip top. He dresses, and the guy is very wealthy as well. He's a businessman and so. And he saw me behind the counter working and sitting there, because yes, I used to run a cafe, but really it's my partner and the people working with us there. I was just there doing my chat and stuff and resting. This was here we go, Eden is resting, because I'm a lot better since my housebound days, but definitely running a cafe was way and above me and my partner ambition at the time. But nonetheless, it was a great time. It was great coming. And this guy, he came along and he asked me, "Are you okay, mate?" And he came a few times and we had a bit. Then he told me one day, because I didn't tell people I had them, especially at the beginning in 2015 of the cafe. And he said, have you heard of ME? And I said, yeah, I have it. He said, I thought you did. And I said, how did you know I have it? So many people, you know, it's like, he's Jack, that he's very like, I think he was a boxer in his young days. He's this kind of a guy. And he said, my dad has it all his life, and he could never hold a job. And his dad is 87 now. So they grew up very poor because there was no benefit system, there was no one, there was no help. And I met his dad. His dad is lovely, and I really hope to get him. He's still able to communicate. He's quite special. And I actually recommended his dad to do the hyperbaric oxygen chamber a few years ago, and it was one thing that was, like to me, really helpful. And again, I'm sure in future we can do an episode of things that me and Russell we found particularly helpful. I'm sure, Russell, you've tried like me millions of things and spend money and
a fortune, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And so for you to avoid some pitfalls as well, because you get desperate when you're not well, you would check anything at something to try. So that would be. I used to be at one point. I did lecturing at university, and all my salary, plus I had another job, both part times, but all of that money went on things to try to help me. And then I didn't even have the energy when I left the job to go to the benefit office to explain to them what I have, and then to go to tribunal, because really in his benefit, he looks really well. He's 6 foot, this guy. He's good where he sleeps. You're good, right? You fit. Yeah, you look good. You look tan. You look someone that the blood, it flows good. Surely you're right. So again, I think we can do as well a chat about that, or to share some information. how to deal with
Yeah, I think when you're struggling to figure out what is wrong with you, and you know, when you get a diagnosis, you get a diagnosis for ME, and there are no effective treatments. There's only, you know, self-management approaches, you know, learning pacing and things like that. You're very vulnerable to advertisements of cures and remedies and lotions and potions. And, you know, before, I mean, I was an investment manager. I always thought of myself as being quite a logical, sensible person. But to be ill and for so long, the effect it had on me was profound. All of a sudden, I'm out there trying flower remedies and all these herbally things that with big claims, and yet none of it worked for me. I think a lot of it is, I mean, in my humble opinion, I think a lot of it depends on how much you believe in what it's supposedly doing. But, you know, I then became more interested in actual research, and I wouldn't recommend anything to anybody unless it's been properly subjected to research trials. But you are vulnerable, and you know, these companies and therapists, and they will take your money.
And if I can say, to be a person working in an investment industry, and in Jersey where it's a tax heaven, you need to be screwed on to a level like a surgeon. You need to know so many rules and regulation. You're dealing with very sharp people, with big companies, with, as you said, with millions. They don't trust anyone. So, and with me, I'm a very skeptical person. Maybe not to the level of Russ, because really to be a banker to that level, it takes some kind of a brain on it. But to be reduced from that kind of a critical, skeptical, I done a degree in psychology. I was proud of my scientific method, research, interest and statistics, and then to be reduced to some MLM company, a multi-level company product that somebody is pushing on you, and they may not doing it from a bad place. They've probably been sucked into that company just because maybe they believed in, maybe they already bought the kit and spent a couple of £1,000, and now they want to recuperate, and they think, it's working, it worked for me, it may work. Yeah, it would be great to do something, how to avoid those pitfalls and how to find strength. And because when you're unwell, you're just so desperate, and unfortunately all your thinking mechanism, it just goes out the window, and often you're on your own, so there's no one even there to tell, to bounce it with you. Again, the power of community. And I'll quickly finish on the point which I made with the guy who's 87, that his son came to the shop and spotted that ME. It is the point that my mom has ME to a degree, and it's by raising awareness. So if you do have ME, don't be afraid to tell someone. If you feel unwell and you think it's a ME, go and find someone like either the ME Association or your GP, and find out what it is. Because if your life is restricted, it's not right. We all deserve to live a fulfilling, happy life. So, and there is things out there to help us to a degree, even if they can't cure us, but just finding just a GP giving you a diagnosis, or sending you to an ME unit, or connecting with the ME Association, just being part of the community and helping each other grow and look after each other. We all deserve to live a happy, healthy, safe life. So I just wanted to iterate that point, that it's so good that you guys you never stop.
I think that's another important point from the guideline, isn't it, that you touched on. You mentioned an ME unit, and GPs are not expected to handle everything to do with ME. The guideline establishes, well, it reinforces the need for secondary care services, which are largely hospital-based ME/CFS specialist services. And these are teams of healthcare professionals working together. Many of them have been working with people with ME for as long as the previous guideline was in place, if not before then. So 20 years. some of these places have. I can't say all of them, we get a lot of feedback. Let me be generous and say that the feedback has been mixed, but a lot of the services were following the recommendations of the previous guideline, which, wasn't necessarily the best way to approach ME. Whereas with the new guideline, a lot of our work now is going to be, working with people in these ME/CFS specialist services to help them implement the new guideline recommendations. So if you have symptoms, say you've had a viral infection, say you've had glandular fever, that's one of the more common routes to ME. The research is saying that for things like glandular fever, there are other viruses as well, that around 10% of people who get glandular fever don't have a full recovery. So if you get it, I don't know if you've had it, I had it in my early 20s, you sort of get knocked off your feet for about 2 or 3 weeks. It's obviously very affects your throat, but you generally feel like death warmed up. But then it passes and you sort of get on with life. But that virus, that Epstein-Barr virus, that remains in your system. It's one of these viruses that sort of lodges within you, and it can be reactivated by other viruses or through stress is another trigger. But if you'd had glandular fever and you found that the symptoms, you still had the symptoms and you just couldn't recover, you eventually were able to go and see your GP, or you called your GP out. That's another thing within the new guideline. The ability of it sort of recommends that GPs and healthcare professionals visit people who are severely affected at home. It talks about telephone consultations, that kind of thing, which might be a lot easier if you're housebound or bedbound. Anyway, so this person who's had glandular fever, they haven't recovered, they've still got the symptoms. They eventually go to see the doctor, or a member of the family does on their behalf, perhaps. The doctor thinks, oh, that sounds like ME to me. He starts going through the diagnostic process. He's doing all the blood tests. He's ruling out anything else that might be causing the symptoms. At 3 months, he says, you've still got the symptoms. It's really affecting your ability to function normally. So I'm diagnosing you with ME/CFS. He can then refer you to the specialist team, and they will help you to understand your condition, and they should work with you. You're in the driving seat. If you're not well enough to be, then you can nominate a member of your family or carer. You can agree to anything they want to do. They might suggest something you don't feel comfortable with. Say so. You don't have to do what they're suggesting. It shouldn't affect your ongoing relationship with the NHS. But they will help you to understand your illness, and they will work with you if you're having difficulties coping with it, because as we've talked about, it does have such a devastating effect on the life you led before. And, you go through this whole grieving process and this period of coming to terms with your life now. So they can help you with that, but more importantly, they can help you learn to manage. And, this is essential. So there are certain things that you shouldn't be doing. You shouldn't be trying to push through, although I think it's partly human nature that we all do try, because we want to get back to work, we want to get back to school, we want to get back to college or university, back to the life we had. But the guideline is pretty specific about what you should be trying to do. And the specialist services should be taking this on board. So it's all about activity management, isn't it? How to properly manage. It's about learning your limits. Don't do too much too soon. Allow for a proper convalescence at times when you need it. But slowly and hopefully things will stabilize. I think that's the thing to aim for first, isn't it? Is some sense of stability. So most people have higher expectations than they can realistically achieve. I certainly did. So you need to learn to tone down your expectations, really drive them down into the ground, and just, you know, get to a point where you feel, I don't think you're ever going to feel happy, but get to a point where you feel pleased to have accomplished something. So we were talking about reading, weren't we? And it's useful to have distractions, isn't it, when you're ill? So things like reading, things like something that you find enjoyment from. But your goal might be to read a paragraph on a page, for example. And learning how to manage these activities, to vary them. So don't spend too long doing mental activities, try and balance them out with a bit of physical activity or, you know, some other form of stimulation. Introduce proper rest, because we all think we know what resting is, but most of us don't. You've got to learn new approaches to things. And that's where I think the specialist teams can come in. I mean, they should be incredible assets to people with ME. And now with the new guideline, I'm you know, desperately hoping that they will be. The problem we have is that in England, we used to have a network of about 60 specialist services around England. Wales, virtually nothing. Scotland, absolutely nothing. Northern Ireland, nothing. The Isle of Man are just about to introduce their first, it's going to be an ME and long COVID clinic. And the network in England has gone from 60 to, I think it was 38. So again, part of the whole work that we want to get engaged with is encouraging local NHS funding bodies, so clinical commissioning groups and hospital trusts, to recognise the importance of having specialist services for people with ME. And if they haven't already got a service, then encouraging them to fund a service. And people on the ground, local support groups, people with ME living in a particular area, you know, this is where they can come in, because local commissioning authority, they'll listen to you because you're resident in their constituencies, and you can involve your local MPs. We'll try and do it as a national approach, but we want to involve local support groups as well. And I'm meeting with Dr. Mark Harper from the Cambridge support group next month, and he's hoping to establish a national local support group network so that they can all get together, share best practice, talk about how to implement the new NICE guideline, how to create good specialist services, and then at the ground level, try and campaign to get these services in place. Amazing. And that's all I wanted to say really about the NICE guidelines. Sorry to have gone on, but it's very important, and I really, really, really do encourage anybody who's either got ME, or if they're a family member of somebody who's got ME, or they're caring for somebody with ME, download the summary that we've produced and familiarise yourself with the content, because it is so important.
I totally agree, and I can't thank you enough for going through some details of what it contains, and yes, and I will leave a link directly to the summary below this podcast, so it's there for us to access easily. We've been going on for quite a while, and I'm sure our listeners, like ourselves, we have only so much energy, and it is so important that we manage it. So I think we're going to have you, Russell, back in time. I know in between all the million things that you do and work, so it will be in the future, hopefully soon, but with no pressure. We will touch in a future episode about the Decode ME project of the genetic, and also about the ME biobank, which is again, it's all of these kind of things are part of the ME support of research and understanding ME better and diagnostic better. And I know that maybe we can touch quickly on the decoding ME, because it's actually looking for participants. So it would be good if you can just that, and then it's already there for those who want to explore more and be part of this research, if you don't mind. And then you can touch on the ME biobank as well if you have energy, and then we'll close it and we'll touch base in the future. But you're amazing, and thank you for explaining to us in detail all of these things.
Okay, so Decode ME is a phenomenal project because it's the largest ever study involving people with ME. It needs to recruit 20,000 people with ME, which is, I mean, compared to other illnesses, compared to diseases like MS and the various forms of cancer, it's small scale. But for us, it's a big deal. It took over 5 years of hard work to get the grant application together and then to get it funded by the Medical Research Council and the National Institute of Health Research. I worked on the preliminary grant applications, and it was a nightmare, honestly. So I really do tip my hat to the Decode ME team. They've done a phenomenal job. Now, you can visit the Decode ME website, you can sign up. You will then be approached, if you're selected, you'll be approached, you'll be asked to fill in a questionnaire just to check that you're suitable for the study. If accepted, you'll be sent a spit kit in the post. This is how they collect your DNA, because Decode ME is all about genetics. And what they're hoping to do is that by studying 20,000 people's DNA profile, they will be able to identify markers that are unique to people with ME. So they'll compare the samples to people who are healthy. They'll also compare them, I think, to a smaller cohort of people with long COVID. They may also be including a cohort of people with multiple sclerosis. I can't quite remember that. But the end result should be, touch wood, that they identify something unique to ME. Now, that might then indicate why certain people are susceptible to developing this kind of illness and other people are not. But we won't really know until the results are published. It'll be, I can't remember what they said the time frame was, but recruitment's going to take most of this year, I would imagine. And then they'll need to assess the results. It's being driven by Professor Chris Ponting, who's an amazing guy. He's a geneticist. He's from the University of Edinburgh. It's a top-notch study. They work very hard, as I said. So if you haven't already signed up, then please sign up. They've already exceeded 20,000 people, but don't let that put you off, because not everybody will be accepted to the study. So I'll give you the link. We'll put it below the video, and you can read all about it. Right. Very quickly, the ME Biobank. Okay. So Decode ME is going to get all these samples, isn't it, of DNA, like I said, and all those samples will be held in a bank. Yeah. The ME Biobank is similar, but the samples it collects are blood, and it uses that blood in various ways that are beyond me, because I'm not a researcher or a scientist, for research. So members of the biobank, they go out. Caroline Kingdon, she goes out and she visits severely affected people by ME. She goes to their home, she draws blood, she takes it back. The blood samples are stored at the biobank and then accessed by any researcher who wants them. And that's the way that it's more cost effective. So if a researcher wants to conduct a study on ME, it costs them more money to go out and obtain samples than it does for them to contact the ME Biobank and say, can you send me 200 samples from your ME cohort? Also, the biobank stores samples of healthy controls and people with MS, so that you've got a useful comparison. So the biobank started in 2011, and the ME Association has funded it every year since then. We're the only funding body for the ME Biobank. They will become independent because the samples that they sell should produce enough income to enable them to continue. They operate, the team work from the London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine in London, obviously. And I think it's a brilliant resource, and I hope it continues to grow. That's all I've got to say about that, really. Oh, the researchers at the biobank, because not only do they store the samples, they actually conduct research on those samples themselves. Put a note in your diaries for July. They're publishing the results of an 8-year longitudinal study. So one of the weaknesses in ME research is that there are very few studies that actually track individuals over time. So the biobank team have done that. They've tracked individuals for 8 years. They'll publish the results in July, and it's going to be quite fascinating, I think, because it'll be looking at blood, the immune system through the blood, also functionality. So participants filled in questionnaires and things as they went. So we might be able to see, track things over time. So yeah, July. Sorry, I'm running out of what's it now.
All good, all good. No, it's. Thank you so much. And yeah, I guess with the biobank, it's basically by having those samples there already. When a scientist or researcher puts an application, what you're basically saying, it's more attractive for them to get the fund from the body that give funds, because they can show, look, there's already the results are there. I just need to study them. So it's kind of make it easier and more attractive for those who give them the grants to agree for the grant. So it's really valuable to have it. And then the researchers in years to come, and in July there will be already a first result of that. Russell, it's been amazing to have you here and inspired.
I hope I haven't exhausted you.
No, you are. You gave me.
I'll tell you what. One of the hardest things is people don't. I don't think people appreciate it how tiring listening is. Have you found that listening is draining, isn't it?
It isn't out, but I have to say, I used to struggle with it for many years. But just before I done my psychology degree, I done a counseling degree, and thankfully it was before ME, so I had enough practice with it. So I was enjoying listening with them, and also because I'm brain fog most of the time, I just have to concentrate. But you're right, this is the time just to make sure I'm not saying. And in some of these podcast episodes, someone will say something really, and then I'm throwing them off the topic. But it all goes, and it comes back to me, or it doesn't, and I then write in the description. But the nice thing here, and this is, I guess, why I find it easy to do this podcast, is that I'm speaking to my kind of audience and people. It's so easy that we all forgiving here for each other, and I started sometimes I say crazy things, but it's just it's part of the ME living and stuff. So I don't feel judged. I feel really comfortable, and so thank you for the audience that understanding that, and for you as well, Russell, for knowing exactly what I'm on about.
Thank you very much as well for getting in touch.
No, of course it's no, you've been the ME Association has been there for me for the past few years. When I discovered you again, I didn't discover until a few years ago, but it just, when I did it just felt so right, and I knew as I said, I wanted to write a book. I started it didn't, but I knew that that if I do something publicly, I have to have you here first to check in that I'm guiding I'm navigating the boat in the right direction here and not adding more confusion, because there's already so much confusion and misinformation and craziness, and everyone happy to give advice. So I think the main thing is just to hear out the experts and people that are going through ME as well, what they tried, rather than then disturb the peace. We need peace and flow and tranquility and everything. Anyway, Russell, thank you so much. And
You're more than welcome.
thank you. Thank you for those listening at home. I will leave in the description below all the links, so don't worry about Russell will send them and we'll add them and we'll sort it. So thank you once again, and I'm looking forward to connecting with you in future episodes.